The smell of damp wool comes from an old woman's suitcase as she arranges her scarf. Damp wool, that very particular smell of moisture and warm fiber. I breathe it in and am immediately far away, in the mountains, with a woman who told me everything about the weather as though it were a language you could learn. And I remember quite suddenly how carefully she listened to the clouds. It was 1930, and I was traveling from Innsbruck to Vienna on the train. A woman got on, middle-aged, perhaps 50, with eyes that had a strange clarity, as though always searching for something invisible. She wore a thick wool coat, and across her shoulders lay a large wool scarf that still smelled slightly damp. She sat down and immediately stared out the window, not just looking out, but looking as though reading a book. After a while, I asked if everything was all right. She looked at me and smiled. She said she was sorry, but she was just watching the clouds. I wasn't to blame. Then she asked if I was interested in the weather. I said I simply endure the weather. It's simply there. She laughed, genuine, warm laughter. She said that sounded very sad, but she understood. Her name was Ketta, and she was a weather observer at a small remote weather station in the Alps, one of the few women in Europe doing this work. She'd lived there, high above most clouds, in a small stone house with thick walls, for the last 15 years. She'd probably stay there forever, I thought. She observed the weather every day, without exception, noting temperatures, humidity, wind direction, cloud types, pressure. She described her work like an art form, like something sacred. She said the weather was never the same, that every day had a new story, that every day brought surprises, that the sky was an endless book you could read your whole life and never reach the end. She showed me a notebook where she'd written her observations. It wasn't a scientific notebook with numbers, though it had numbers too, but it was also full of drawings. She'd drawn the cloud formations every day. There were pages full of fine pencil lines representing what the clouds looked like. She told me the names: cirrus clouds, thin as feathers; cumulus clouds, like tree crowns; stratus clouds, flat like cloth. She said that most people didn't really see the weather, that they looked through it without noticing. They'd say, "It's cloudy," or "sunny," and that was all. But it was so superficial, so damned superficial. Like seeing a human face and only saying, "It's a face," that it has eyes and a nose. But if you really looked, if you took time, then you could see that every cloud told a story, that every cloud formation was a message. The fine cirrus clouds always came from the west, and that meant, with great reliability, that bad weather would come. Not today, not tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow, or in 3 days. But it would come. The white cumulus clouds meant it was unstable, that the air was turbulent. Thunderstorms could come, rain, wind, sudden changes. But the grey, flat stratus clouds, they meant something sad was coming, that there would be days of rain without drama, just wetness and melancholy. She spoke of her station with a tenderness that showed she loved the place. It was a small house with thick stone walls, and only she lived there year-round, and sometimes a young man, her assistant, who helped her with the precise measurements. It was lonely, yes, but it was also very quiet, and quiet was the most important thing there was. She said most people couldn't endure quiet, that they'd go mad from the silence, but she needed quiet the way other people needed water. The quiet helped her hear the weather. Yes, to hear. She said this with great seriousness, and I saw this wasn't poetry for her, but truth. The weather had a sound, a very particular rhythm, and if you listened well, if after long years you listened, you could predict what would come, could read the signs nature gave. The reason for her trip to Vienna was a conference. She was to speak there about her observations. 15 years of data from an Alpine station. The other scientists all had modern instruments, but she still had only her eyes and ears and notebook. She was a bit unsure, but she also said she hoped she could show them something that the instruments couldn't show. That nature had patterns you could only see if you really looked. She described the Alps in a particular year, 1925, when there was no real winter, as though the seasons had miscalculated. The temperatures were strange, fluctuating in values she'd never recorded before. The clouds came from unexpected directions, not from the west as usual, but from the south and north at the same time. She'd known that something big, something strange, something important was happening in the world, but her measuring instruments, the modern scientific ones, hadn't recorded it exactly. The numbers had been wrong, or not wrong, but insufficient. She'd simply known, from the way the clouds moved, from her drawings, from the way the air smelled, that the world was changing, that something big was coming. She spoke about damp wool. She said you could see what the air was like from damp wool. If the wool became damp without rain falling, then the air was full of water, and rain would come. She could feel it in her whole body. She said most animals would know that too, but people had forgotten to listen to their bodies. When we arrived in Vienna, as the city became visible and the Danube gleamed silver in the sun, Keta gave me a small piece of her damp wool. She said to keep it forever, that it should be mine. She said that if I held it and it became damp, without my consciously wetting it, then I should know that the air was telling me something, that the air was bringing me messages from far-off places. She said the weather wasn't just something you endured, something you simply accepted like a burden, but that it was a complete language, a language you could learn if you were ready. The clouds were words, the rain was sentences, the wind was dialogue, and everything had to be heard and read and understood like a child learning to walk. The smell of damp wool has dissolved, mixed with the warm air of the carriage, with the smoke and human warmth. The woman opposite is folding her scarf now and putting it away carefully. I lean back in my seat and close my eyes. The train travels into the night, and I think of Ketha, high in her little house in the mountains, as she watches the stars tonight, measures the humidity, draws in her notebook. I kept Ketha's piece of wool for a long time, through many journeys, through many moves, until finally it dried out and slowly crumbled to fine dust. But I still remember the smell, that very specific smell of Alps and weather and patience. I remember how Ketha looked at the clouds, not like a scientist collecting data, but like a friend having a conversation with them, listening to them, answering them. Listen to the weather in your dreams and let it show you everything. I closed my eyes. Just for a moment, I thought. Just for a moment. But then pictures came behind my lids. Not clear pictures, just colors. Soft colors. Blue and gray and a touch of gold from the lamp in the compartment. And these colors blended into something that wasn't quite seeing any longer, and wasn't yet dream. The train travelled on, clack, 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 and each clack, clack was a bit further away, as though the train wasn't quite in the same space as me anymore, as though I were already half elsewhere, half in that land where tiredness lives, where everything becomes simple. The train leaves Reichenbach heading towards Plauen, and you sit beside a woman with baskets and dirty hands. Her name is Gertrude, and she gathers wild herbs. Not simply to gather, but because she knows that Europe's greatest restaurant chefs ask for her. Sorrel from the Falkland, they say, has a flavor like no other. It's more sour, greener, more alive. Gertrude has been gathering for 26 years, and in that time, she's learned that the finest herbs don't grow in nurseries. They grow wild, at the edges of meadows on stony slopes, where life is hard and flavor becomes spicy. You ask how she tells sorrel from other plants. She pulls a leaf from her bag and hands it to you. "Smell it," she says. You smell something sour, sharp, almost citrusy. "Taste it," she says. You hesitate, but Gertrude smiles, and you're not as old as she is, so you're still naive. "Just a small bite," she adds. At once, your tongue is filled with a sourness that's not unpleasant, but pure and alive. Gertrude tells you of the spring meadows of the Falkland. In May and June, when the sun grows stronger and the nights warm, sorrel explodes from the earth. It's like a festival, she says. The whole meadow becomes green and sour. But now, in spring, when the beech buds are just breaking, the young shoots are best. Tender, not bitter, with a slightly sweet aftertaste that only young plants have. The train rolls through the Falkland landscape, and you watch the meadows fly past. They're not yet fully green, not yet explosive, but everywhere you now see the first sorrel leaves, now that Gertrude's shown you where to look. They're springing from the damp earth like little hopes. The beech forests round about are just putting out their tender, pale green, and the wood anemones have faded, but their green seeds are everywhere. Gertrude points to the fields on the right. "See that field edge there? That's my sacred place," she says. "I've gathered there for 20 years. The farmer knows me, and he mows later, always later, because he knows I need my herbs. It's not just business. It's friendship. It's mutual respect." Gertrude shows you her smartphone. She has a photo of a dish prepared by a famous 3-star chef, made only with her sorrel. It's impressive, almost scientifically precise, and she's photographed it with a simple phone. But Gertrude says that's not the most important thing. What matters is that the flavor is right. What matters is that people get a different pleasure eating her sorrel than if they ate some cultivated herb from a greenhouse. Gertrude shows you another photo on her smartphone. It's an old photograph of herself from 40 years ago. Young Gertrude, just starting out, with long hair and shining eyes. She stood in a meadow full of sorrel, and the light was golden. "That was the beginning," Gertrude says. "I didn't know yet it would become my life's work. I thought it would be just seasonal work. But then I fell in love with the meadows, with the plants, with the rhythms of nature, and I couldn't stop. And now, after 40 years, I'm still here. Older, more tired, but also wiser, and happier than I've ever been." You feel tiredness coming, quiet and pleasant. Gertrude's voice is like the rustle of leaves. She speaks of a particular field edge near Oelsnitz where sorrel grows especially well. It's a slope facing east, with streams brimming with meltwater keeping the soil damp. The sun only touches the slope late in the morning, so the plants have time to grow without burning. And on that field edge, Gertrude says, there's sorrel so sour and so green, it almost hurts. The ants are everywhere, active again. You see them on the meadows, black columns hurrying across the damp earth. Gertrude says that ants are good neighbors for sorrel. They eat the pests that would harm the plants. It's a dance between life and life, she says. Everything is connected to everything else. Nature isn't isolated, but one great network of dependencies and relationships. The sorrel needs the ants need the plants need the sun and water, and Gertrude needs it all together to do her work. And without Gertrude, without her respect for this balance, the whole chain would break. That's the responsibility she carries. That's the weight of her love. The train slows. The forests of the Vogtland grow denser. A woodpecker calls somewhere, a green woodpecker, with its laugh that sounds like madness. Gertrude says she knows that woodpecker. He's in the forests here every year, eating ants from their nests, and the ants protect the sorrel. It's like a great concert, she says, where every instrument has its place. Gertrude has a basket of sorrel with her, which she'll harvest at her next stop. But she says she'll sleep first, because you should only gather herbs when you're awake and present. That's the secret, she says. You must be there, truly there, for the plants. You must speak with them, ask if you may take them. You notice your eyes are closing as Gertrude speaks. Her stories of fields and herbs, of chefs and wild flavor, all of it lulls you to sleep. The damp earth of the Vogtland is now your bed. The beech buds are your blanket, and the sorrel is your dream, sour and green, and completely alive. Gertrude speaks still of a time 2 decades ago when she almost gave up. The meadows were shrinking, the farmers sprayed herbicides, and the sorrel disappeared. She thought it was over, that she'd have to abandon her profession. But then a young chef came to her, a starred chef, and said, "Keep going. Your herbs are the best there is. I'm making a whole menu with only your ingredients." And since then, it's been going upwards. Restaurants seek her. Not restaurants seek the herbs, but Gertrude. She's become a brand, a guarantee of quality. She shows you another recipe that a chef wrote on a piece of paper. It's simple. Sorrel, butter, salt, a bit of fish. That's all. The sorrel should speak, not the preparation. That's the secret of good cooking, Gertrude says. Trust your ingredients. Allow them to be what they are. The train rattles on, and Gertrude prepares to get off. She says that tomorrow morning she'll be back in the fields, knee-deep in the damp earth, looking for the most tender leaves, the best sorrel shoots. She'll work as she's always worked, with love and patience. And somewhere, in a fine restaurant, a plate will be prepared with her sorrel, and someone will think, "This is the best I've ever tasted." And that person won't know that a woman named Gertrude knelt in the Vogtland fields at dawn to make that flavor possible. But Gertrude will know. and that's enough. Gertrude speaks still of her dream, that one day people will understand that food isn't just nutrients, but love, that in every wild sorrel leaf lives the story of a person who tended the plant with patience and care, who chose the right time, who knew the right meadow, who understood it was about more than profit. It's about the dignity of nature, the beauty of work. And if people understand that every bite they eat carries a story, they'll see the world differently. They'll see and appreciate the Gertrudes of the world. That's her dream. That's what she works for. Sleep now. The wild herbs watch over you. The sorrel will appear sour and fresh in your dreams, and the restaurant chefs draw near, ready to cook and serve your dreams. Dream of fields full of life, full of flavor, full of possibility. I closed my eyes. Just for a moment, I thought. Just for a moment. But then pictures came behind my lids. Not clear pictures, just colors, soft colors, blue and gray, and a touch of gold from the lamp in the compartment. And these colors blended into something that wasn't quite seeing any longer and wasn't yet dream. The train carried on, clack, 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 and each clack, clack seemed a bit further away, as though the train wasn't quite in the same space as me anymore, as though I were already half elsewhere, half in that place where tiredness lives, where everything becomes simple. Sit still and listen, for now I'm going to tell you about a woman whose hands shape molten metal into bowls, as if they were living things. The train travels today from Siegen to Betzdorf, and outside it's snowing lightly on the dark green hills of the Siegerland. You sit across from a woman named Irmgard on the train, and she holds a piece of tin in her hand. It's a grey-white metal, smooth and heavy, and she turns it slowly so the light dances on it like water. It's already polished, already finished, a masterpiece. Yet also a humble thing, an everyday object meant for the good things in life. Irmgard is a tinsmith, and it's an art that's become so rare you've almost forgotten it exists, that most people don't even know people like her still exist. There are only a handful of people left in the Siegerland who practice this old craft. Perhaps 10, perhaps fewer. But Irmgard is one of them, and she's one of the best. She casts tin work according to old templates, bowls and jugs, beakers and plates, dishes and utensils, all handmade, all unique, all different, each with its own soul. She tells you about her work as the train glides through the snowy landscape, dark fields, snow-covered trees. The tin she uses is not the tin you buy today. It's special tin with a long history, often sourced from old objects melted down and recast. Sometimes she uses old alloys, generations old, recipes her grandmother knew. Or she creates the alloys herself, mixing tin with other metals, silver or copper, to achieve the right color and texture, to get the correct luster that looks old and yet is new. The knowledge of how to prepare the right tin was taught to her by her father, and by his father before him, and his father before him, going back to the time when the Siegerland was famous for its tin, when this region was Germany's pride for its craftsmanship. In her workshop in Siegen stands a great furnace, and in front of it, a hollow form of clay that looks like a bowl but is far more complex. This is the casting mold, and each mold is made by hand, a work of art in itself, because the mold determines how beautiful the finished bowl will be. Making the mold is as difficult as the casting itself. Irmgard heats the tin until it becomes thin and flowing like water, yet far denser and heavier, and dangerous. Very dangerous. Hot tin can burn, can cause scalding, demands extreme care. Then she pours it carefully, very carefully, with a special clay vessel into the mold. It's like magic. The molten metal finds the contours, fills every angle, every impression, every fine detail of the form. When it cools, you must wait, and wait, and wait, sometimes hours, because the tin needs time to solidify, and if you hurry, it continues to expand, shrinks later, distorts. Only then can you carefully break away the mold and see if it worked, if the bowl is whole, if it's beautiful. It doesn't always work. There are many faults that can occur. Small air bubbles in the tin that form if the mold wasn't perfectly prepared, if there was a trace of moisture inside. Sometimes the tin isn't hot enough and doesn't flow properly, solidifies too quickly, becomes uneven. Sometimes the mold, despite all care, breaks, and all the hot tin simply runs away. That happens perhaps once or twice in 100 attempts, and each time it's a disappointment, a small grief. But when it works, when the bowl comes from the mold and is whole, perfect, without fault, then it's a small miracle, a moment of grace. Then Irmgard must begin working it, sanding with fine stones, polishing with special cloths, smoothing with old tools her grandfather used. The rough edges are removed, the surface becomes smoother and finer. In the end, the tin shines like moonlight, like a night full of stars. Irmgard shows you a piece she's working on the train. It's still warm, hot in the hand, and she carries it in a special cloth so you won't burn yourself. It's an old form, a bowl that existed perhaps in the Middle Ages, perhaps in the late Middle Ages or Renaissance, a form used by kings and nobles that stood on tables in great houses. The original comes from a museum in Munich, from a royal collection, and Irmgard has studied the old bowl at length, has made sketches, has taken measurements, has tried to understand how the old masters worked, what techniques they used, what materials they chose, how they thought, how they formed. She's remade the casting mold, millimeter by millimeter. Not simple, not easy. Because the old bowl was worn by the hands of 100 generations, changed by centuries, and Irmgard had to guess, to interpret, what was original and what was altered by time and use. And now she casts a bowl according to this old template, and this new bowl will be touched by many hands over the next 100 years too. It's her way of preserving the past, of keeping the old techniques alive, of continuing the dialogue with the masters of old. The tinsmith also tells you about the people who buy her bowls. They're collectors and museums from all over Europe. People who understand that what Irmgard does is not merely craft, but art, pure and genuine art. One of her bowls can last 100, 200, 300 years, and it will still be beautiful, still be valuable, still be a mark of excellence and care. You can't say that of industrial products, packaged in plastic, gone to waste in a few years. The things Irmgard makes are things that survive generations, that families pass down, that end up in museums and bring people joy. As the train slows, approaching Betzdorf, Irmgard leans back and looks out the window at the snow-covered fields, and there's a strange mixture of sadness and contentment in her gaze. She tells you she doesn't know who will carry on her craft after her. Her sons aren't interested in it. Neither has learned the trade, and there are scarcely any apprentices left in this country willing to spend years learning the art of tinsmithing. But she works anyway, bowl after bowl, form after form, as if the knowledge that time carries forward were flowing into the world through her hands. She works because the craft belongs to her, because it's in her genes, because she simply can't do otherwise. And perhaps, she thinks sometimes, perhaps someone, one day, will see her bowls and want to understand how they were made. And then the tradition will live on, perhaps in another form, but alive. In her workshop, at the same location for 30 years, Irmgard works every day. She begins early in the morning, before sunrise, because then the furnace is cold and she must heat it first. The work is strenuous, it's hot, it's loud. But it's also peaceful, she says. There's a simplicity in this work that drowns out everything else. You focus on the tin, on the form, on the perfect temperature, and everything else falls away. The problems of the world, the worries, the disappointments, all of it becomes unimportant when you can watch a bowl come into being. Think of the things made with your hands that came into being with dignity and slowness. Think of the tin that shines in the depths of winter, and of the women who shape it whilst the world sleeps and dreams. And the landscape outside grew softer. The outlines of the trees dissolved. The fields became dark expanses over which the moon sometimes slid its pale light. I felt how my breathing slowed, how my heart slowed, how the whole body let itself sink downward into the warm embrace of the seat cushion, into the warm embrace of this train that carried me without my having to do anything. It was a good feeling, a rare one, to be carried without effort, simply to trust that the wheels will keep turning, that the tracks will lead on, that morning will come eventually. Settle back, for now I'm going to tell you about hands that bring old books back to life. The train travels today from Halle to Leipzig, and outside it's cold and snowed in. But you'll grow warm when you hear what a woman named Helena does in her workshop. Helene is a bookbinder, and it's no simple craft. It's an art that's nearly extinct, because in an age when books are printed and glued like disposable goods, there are few people left who understand how to bind a book with their hands, truly bind it, with thread and glue and patience. But Helene does it, and she does it with a dedication you can feel when you come near her. In the train she sits across from you, and on her lap rests an old book whose spine is broken. The cover is dark leather, stained and perforated. It's a book from the 19th century, perhaps even earlier, and someone has paid Helene to save it, to bring it back to life. She shows you the book, and as she carefully places it in your lap, she tells you about her work. Restoration begins with an analysis, she says, with a careful, loving examination. You must know how the book was originally bound, what materials were used, how the cords run through that hold the pages together. You must understand who made it, in what time, with what intention. This isn't simple, especially when the damage is severe, when it looks as though the book is lost forever. In such cases, she must remake the cords entirely, must remove old threads, thread new ones, all by hand, all with care. It's like heart surgery on a living creature, Helene says, and it requires the same precaution, the same love. She uses different sorts of adhesive depending on what material she's repairing. For paper, she uses a special paste. For leather, another. The colors and consistencies must be right, or you do more harm than good. Helene has a feeling for these things, a feeling that develops only through decades of work. Her hands know what's right and what isn't, without much deliberation. Helene works in Leipzig, in an old house near the Augustusplatz, in a room that smells today as it must have 100 years ago. Her workshop is full of colors and odors that transport you instantly to another world, a world where time moves more slowly. There are the smells of old paper, of linseed oil and leather, of glue and gum, and beneath it all, a fine, dusty scent, as if time itself had a perfume. Hanging on the wall are tools, pincers, bone folders, long flat knives with silver blades, all worn from use, all bearing witness to having been in many hands. On the large wooden table lie open books, whose pages are in various stages of repair. Some are only partially visible, wrapped round with paper strips and linen threads, like a patient in hospital, where healing takes place slowly. The wood stove in the corner burns, and the snow at the windows melts gradually in the heat. When Helene works, she wears an apron of thick cotton, already splashed hundreds of times with glue and color and water, an apron that looks like a work of art from all the spots. Her fingers are strong and dexterous, slightly curved from decades of labor, and when she sets her knife to sever old cords, to smooth leather, you see that this is a woman who trusts herself, who knows her tools as a mother knows her children. The craft of bookbinding is, as Helene explains to you, not merely a matter of technique. It's also a question of knowledge, of intuition, of love for tradition. You must know the history of books, must understand that each book is a window onto a particular time, a particular culture, a particular craftsmanship. You must understand how different epochs bound their books, the intricate bindings of the Middle Ages, the elegant lines of the Renaissance, the robust volumes of the 19th century. You must know how to recognize old colors, how to tell which leather, which paper, which adhesive was used. You must categorize and repair damage without falsifying the book, without modernizing it, without destroying its soul. Helene spent years learning, first in a workshop in Dresden, then in one in Berlin, then with an old master in Munich. She studied the old masters, learned their techniques, uncovered some of their secrets. As the train passes through the dark landscape, Helene tells you about a special book she restored 3 years ago. It was an edition of Goethe's works from 1850, with a beautiful leather binding and golden letters stamped on the spine, precisely impressed with small ornaments. But the cover was so damaged that almost everything seemed lost. The glue was hard and brittle like glass. The cords were torn, and the leather edges were peeling away like dead skin. And inside, it looked as if the book had been in a fire. Helene worked on it for 2 months, every day, sometimes 10 hours at a stretch. She gathered it piece by piece, like an archaeologist reconstructing an ancient artwork from ruins. She carefully threaded old linen threads through the gatherings, applied new leather that matched the original color and texture, and hand-tooled the old pattern, working with special tools older than herself. In the end, the book was like new again, but also still old. It retained its character, its history, the marks of time. But now you could hold it again, could turn the pages without it falling apart. That's what Helene loves. She doesn't love binding new books. Any machine can do that. And it's boring, she says. It's not creative. It's just routine. She loves saving old books, preserving their history, protecting and restoring their soul. Because every old book is a piece of history, a window onto a lost world. The stains and scratches tell stories. Someone spilled coffee here. Someone wrote a note there. The paper is worn at this place because a particular page was especially loved. They are traces of human life, of hands that turned the pages, of eyes that read the words, of life that has settled in the folds of the paper. The train is arriving in Leipzig now. Outside, you see the city lights, the silhouettes of old houses. Helena packs away the book she showed you. Tomorrow, she'll repair it in her workshop, and in a few weeks, it will be handed to a collector, or perhaps a library. It will continue to live, will be preserved, will be read. And Helena will know that she made this possible, that her hands gave new life to a valuable object of history. The train slows, and through the window you see the lights of Leipzig. Helena carefully puts the old book away, as if tucking a newborn into bed. She tells you that the work is a matter of humility. You must be humble before the people who came before you, before their hands, their skill, their love of beauty. You must work respectfully, not destructively, but preservatively. And sometimes, she says, when you're working with a particularly beautiful book, when you see the excellence of the original craftsmanship, you feel small and inadequate. You ask yourself whether you're good enough to carry this task. But then you remember that you shouldn't try to be better than the masters of old, but only to honor them, to preserve their work so it's passed into the future. Close your eyes and imagine how it feels to put something old and broken back together. Think of the books on your nightstand. Think of the hands that bound them. Think of all the people who read this book before you, and all those who will read it still. Settle back now. You're going to hear a story today about the hands of a woman who transforms snowflakes into lace patterns. Imagine it's deep winter and you're sitting on a train passing through the Erzgebirge. Outside, snow lies across the dark hillsides and the lights of the small villages twinkle like Christmas ornaments in the night. The woman you're listening to today is called Marguerite, and she's a lace maker just as her mother was, and her mother's mother before her. You see her sitting by the window in a compartment, and before her lies what churches all over Europe long for. Lace patterns so fine and precious you can scarcely believe human hands created them. The patterns are intricate, full of little leaves and buds, geometric shapes that wind together like living things. Marguerite sits there with her bobbins in her hands, and as the train carries her toward Annaberg Buchholz, she continues working as if there were no distinction between workshop and carriage. You can imagine how the wooden bobbins sing in her fingers, a fine clicking that mingles with the rhythm of the rails. The bobbin in her hand turns, winds the delicate thread back and forth. The material she uses is not simple, cotton so thin it glows in the light. Every thread must go in the right place, every crossing must be perfect, or the entire pattern collapses like a dream upon waking. Marguerite looks at you and smiles. She has well-worked hands with deep furrows in the palms where the bobbins rest. The fingers are visibly hardened, yet not without a certain tenderness. She shows you the lace she's working on. It's a pattern for a church in Dresden, a Christmas lace with stars and scrolls winding around a central rosette. The pattern is roughly 2 meters long and will take another month's work to complete. Marguerite has calculated this, and she feels she has the time. Winter is the best season for lace making. The light is gray and soft. It doesn't glare, and the wood stove in her workshop warms the fingers, makes them supple. Marguerite once told me how she learned this craft from childhood. By the age of 6, her father was showing her how to hold the threads. At first it was terribly difficult. The threads tangled, the bobbins fell to the floor. She wept sometimes in frustration, and her father would simply say, "In a week, you'll be better. In a month, you'll be strong. In a year, you'll be an artist." But then, one day, something magical happened. Her fingers found their own rhythm. Her hands suddenly knew what to do without the brain having to think about it. It was as if the bobbins began to sing of their own accord. Since then, Marguerite has never stopped. She's 65 now, and still she cannot imagine a life without lace making. In her workshop in Chemnitz, she sits every winter and works. It's a large room with tall windows, and outside you can see snow on the roofs. The windows are rimmed with frost, and inside a small wood stove keeps the whole workshop warm. The smell of wood smoke and linseed oil fills the room, and in the corners hang patterns, hundreds of them, all variations of the same ancient knowledge. Some patterns are white, some cream, some faintly yellowed with age and dust. They're laces for churches that are hundreds of years old. They're patterns that were created in the moment when a family decided this would be their art, their craft, their legacy. Margareta looks at these patterns when she's uncertain, when she doesn't know what a new pattern should look like. She studies the old works, understands their logic, their beauty, and then she creates something new that still preserves the old. What Margareta loves about this work is not the money, although fine laces for churches are very valuable. It's something deeper. It's the feeling of being part of an unbroken chain. Every time she begins a new lace, she thinks of her mother, who sat this way in winter too, and of her grandmother, who perhaps lived in even harder circumstances. She thinks of the many women before her who did the same thing, going back to a time when no one recorded who invented the patterns. And every time she completes a thread, when an entire row is finished, she knows that thread will end up in a church in Dresden, or perhaps even in Vienna or Munich. There, people will kneel beneath this lace and pray at Christmas or Easter or on ordinary Sundays. And they won't know that a woman in a small village in the Erzgebirge spent years working on it, that every single crossing was created with love and concentration. You ask Margareta if the work ever becomes monotonous. She shakes her head. No, she says. Each pattern has its own character, its own life. You see when you begin that this is a new pattern, that it will tell a new story. And then, as you work, as the days pass and the rows multiply, you come to know the pattern. You understand its logic, its rhythm. Some patterns are quick, some are slow. Some demand absolute concentration, some let your thoughts wander. Margareta says she's had her best thoughts whilst doing lace. Problems solve themselves, questions answer themselves, when the hands work and the mind is free. The train passes through a village now, and you see the houses you see everywhere in this region. They're old, with dark, half-timbered frames and snow-covered roofs. Some have small signs on the door: lace workshop, lace making, fine craft. In many of these houses, there are still lace makers at work, often late into the night. The tradition is weaker now, yes, much weaker than it once was, but it's not dead. I know Margareta personally, and I know she teaches 2 young girls, both from the village, who may carry the craft forward. One is her granddaughter, the other is the daughter of a neighbor who isn't a lace maker himself, but understands that it's important to preserve this ancient art. She once told me what it feels like to complete a lace. There's a moment, she said, when suddenly the countless threads become a single unity. You've worked on this piece for months, hour after hour. Your back aches, your eyes are tired, your fingers are numb. But then, suddenly, you see it. The complete lace lies before you. All the crossings, all the knots, all the fine work merge into something whole, something beautiful. And in that moment, she said, you can see the soul of the lace. Then you know that all the hours of finger work, the concentration, the dedication, the patience, and the love have been worthwhile. Margareta says that in that moment she weeps sometimes if the lace is particularly beautiful. The train is slowing now. You notice you're arriving at Annaberg Buchholz, and you see Margareta packing away her bobbins. She carefully winds the lace and places it in a special bag where it's safe during the journey. The lace she's been working on isn't finished, but she'll continue tomorrow, and the day after, and the week after that. The work isn't simply interrupted. It goes on, like a river that never stops flowing. And sometime in a few months, that lace will adorn a church, will become part of a church, a place that will outlast generations. Who knows? Perhaps in 100 years, people will still gaze at this lace and marvel at the perfect hands that created it, at the woman whose name may well be forgotten, but whose work will shine forever. The train has grown quieter, and the city lights twinkle gently. Close your eyes now, and think of hands that create beauty, even when no one is watching. Think of the fine things that hold the world together. And as the train continued through the night, ta-dum, ta-dum, I noticed how my thoughts were slowing, how the images in my head grew softer, how the edges blurred. The voices I'd heard became a gentle humming, a humming like distant bees, or like an old song heard in childhood and half remembered now. The warm air in the compartment wrapped around me like a blanket, and I felt how my shoulders gradually sank lower, how the tension of the day fell away from me bit by bit, like leaves falling from a tree, without haste, without sorrow. It comes from far away, comes from somewhere so distant that at first you're not quite sure you're really hearing it, or whether it's your mind imagining it, inventing it. A ringing, deep and resonant, a sound that vibrates in your chest, that travels through the autumn air like a bird, that reaches your ears like a letter from someone you haven't heard in ages, haven't seen for years, someone you've missed without quite knowing it. It's the ringing of a village church bell, the sound of bronze or silver, probably from the far side of the forest, perhaps even farther away, beyond the edges of this world, beyond the boundaries on the map, from another dimension altogether. The ringing doesn't come alone, doesn't arrive in isolation, but brings companions with it. After the first deep note, after this opening, comes a second, then a third, then a pause, then a fourth. It's not swift, not loud, not frantic, not exciting, but slow, measured, deliberate. Like the footsteps of an old priest leaving the church, heading home after his service. Each note has time to itself, has space, has meaning. Time to fade, time to breathe, time for the air to recover. And as you listen, as you become all ears, as the note hangs in the air, vibrates, exists, you notice you're vibrating with it, that your body is tuning itself to this frequency, this single frequency, that your heart slows, stops racing, settles into step with the bell, synchronizes with its rhythm. It's as if the church bell is speaking directly to your heart, as though it knows you, is reaching into you. Without words, purely through sound, it says, it is time. Time for evening. Time for rest. Time for silence. Time for prayer. Time to let go. Time to release the day. The note carries meaning, carries a truth older than religion, older than churches, older than humanity itself, older than language. It's the note that for thousands of years has called communities together, gathered them like a magnet. The note that marks time, that separates day from night. The note that says, clear and distinct, you are not alone. You have never been alone. You will never be alone. The ringing echoes, continues to resound even after the bell has fallen silent, even after the physical sound has ceased. There's an aftersheen, a resonance, an echo in the autumn air, as if the air itself becomes a resonating chamber, becomes music, amplifies the note, and spreads it to every window, every tree, every creature, every sleeping thing in the forests. You feel this resonance in your chest, in your heart. It pulses there, a quiet but permanent rhythm, a reminder that something vast has reached you. It takes you back to Sundays in your childhood, long ago, to days that now seem like dreams, when bells would ring distantly, and your grandmother would say, slowly, with absolute certainty, that the angels were at work. You didn't quite believe her then, but you wanted to believe it with your whole body, because it was so beautiful, so healing, to have the idea that angels lived in bells, that they sent messages to the world. And now, on the train, in autumn, you still hear your grandmother's voice like an echo. Those are the angels. That is their song. That is the music of the spheres. And you know it's not true. Rationally, you know it's impossible. But it feels truer than any reality, truer than your own name, truer than your body. The compartment becomes very still, becomes a stillness you can touch, that takes up space. It's as if the train itself pauses, slows its rhythm, becomes meditative, becomes a monastery, to listen to the ringing, to receive it. The rails beneath you are no longer loud, are hushed. Or rather, they're still active, still functioning, still doing their work, but they're now insignificant. Just a background, a tapestry upon which the ringing is painted, upon which the bell's voice sets its signature. The train becomes a musical instrument itself, becomes a violin or harp, becomes a great resonating chamber, becomes a cathedral that takes in the ringing and carries it forward, carries it through space and time. The ringing comes again, a new cycle, a beginning. It's the same ringing as before, The same sound, the same frequency, but it's also not the same. Because it's later now. Because time continues. Because you've aged since the last ring. Because the world has grown slightly older. Because something has changed. Each note is both a new beginning and a conclusion, is birth and death simultaneously. It says, clear and distinct, this minute is gone, the next begins, the hour passes, the night comes. And this constant companion to the ringing, this rhythm, it's soothing, it's necessary. It's the heartbeat of the world itself. It's the music to which the stars dance. You notice there's no tension left in your body. Your shoulders, which have been tight for hours, are relaxed. Your hands, which had been clenched into fists, are now open, resting flat on your thighs. The sound of the bell has loosened your muscles, commanded you, let go. Everything is all right. The church is watching over you. The heavens are watching over you. There is nothing to fear. The autumn evening deepens. The colors that were gray are now dark, dark brown, almost black. And in this darkness, the ringing of the bell becomes even clearer, even more present. It's as if the darkness amplifies the sound, as if it makes room for the ringing, as if it's saying, this is what matters now. This is what touches you. The train carries on through the darkness, and the ringing travels with you, leads you, guides you. There's a depth to this note that's infinite. The lower part of the tone, its foundation, seems to descend all the way to the foundations of the earth, to the rocks, to the liquid core that holds the world. The upper part of the tone, its overtones, soar upward toward the sky, toward the starless night. The note connects heaven and earth, connects you to everything. You realize it no longer matters where this ringing comes from, which church it's from, which village. It could be from the left, from the right, from ahead, from behind, from above, from below, from everywhere and nowhere at once, from another dimension. The ringing is everywhere, is omnipresent, is all-encompassing, is not bound to a physical location, but to a space within you, a sacred space deep inside, a space that opens when you're ready to listen, when you're ready to let yourself go. The ringing slows, becomes slower, grows rarer, more deliberate. The intervals between the notes grow longer, become endless pauses. It's as if the bell is growing weary, as if the energy is leaving it, as if it too is falling asleep, tired from ringing, tired from its task, as if it's telling you, it is time, time for me to go, to rest, to fall silent, time for you to go as well, to sleep, to rest. The last note holds and holds and holds, seems to last forever, and you don't know if it really does last that long, if physics makes it last, or if your mind extends it, your heart stretches it, because your mind won't let it go, because you're not quite ready to release it. The resonance of the last note grows fainter and fainter, becomes finer, becomes dust, becomes nothing, until it's indistinguishable from silence itself, until it becomes one with the quiet. There's a moment, a perfect moment, where it's impossible to say where the ringing ends and the silence begins, where the boundaries dissolve, where there's no separation. And in that moment, in that space between sound and silence, in that borderland, in that sacred space, you see your own face, see yourself from outside. It's the face of a sleeping person, a face that's peaceful, that's alive, that's neither old nor young, just peaceful, part of the great silence, one with the ringing, one with the night. The ringing stays with you, an echo in your dream, a memory of something you will never lose. After an hour of rain, after hours of tapping and waiting and soaking through, the landscape opens up. The train passes through a forest, drives into the woods as if entering the mouth of some great animal. And with every meter you travel, the scent grows stronger, grows more intense, becomes impossible to ignore. It doesn't come suddenly, not like a blow, but creeps in gradually. Is a scent that crawls into your compartment like morning dew, settles into the fabric of your clothes, makes itself at home and won't let go. It's come to visit, and it's not leaving. The scent of damp earth, of rain-soaked forest, is older than time, older than people, older than language, older than consciousness itself. It's the scent of the earth breathing, living, existing in this dimension, speaking to you. You feel it first in your nose, sense it as a physical impression, a stimulus, but very soon after, you feel it in your whole body, in your bones, in your lungs, in your heart. It's as if this scent doesn't just enter through your nostrils, through that small opening, but also through your skin, your pores, your ears, through every open place in your body, through the gaps where boundaries have dissolved. The scent is green. If green were a scent, it would be this one. Green as chlorophyll, as the soul of plants, as life itself. It's also brown, dark brown like earth, like humus, like the remains, like all the things that have died and been returned to the soil, become ground, become life again. It's a rich scent, no simple fragrance, not pure, but a whole symphony of aromas, an entire opera of smells, a complete orchestra of scents playing together. You recognize the moisture itself, the water that fell from the sky mere hours ago, penetrating the earth, soaking through everything, releasing all the scents that are normally hidden, sealed away beneath the dry crust. There's a hint of decay in this scent, of leaves falling apart, of dead leaves returning to the earth, of wood slowly becoming dust, of great trees quietly dying, of processes that unfold over years. And there's also a hint of hope and life, of seeds swelling, of seedlings ready to burst forth, of life that's ready to renew itself, ready to complete the circle. The forest scent mingles with the train's smells, mingles with your own sense, your human essence, and something new is created. Something magical, something that exists only in this moment, at this special intersection between culture and nature, between metal and earth, between human and wilderness. The train's oil and coal, those metallic smells, are gently overcome, are drowned out, are overtaken by this intense forest fragrance, by nature's strength. It's as if nature is saying, I'm still here, still alive, still present, still real. Underneath all your civilization, beneath all your machines, beneath all your plans and designs, I'm still here. You breathe in deeper, breathe deliberately, intentionally. Fill your lungs with this scent, with this essence. Feel how it penetrates your lungs, fills you from within with something older than yourself. It's not hard to breathe, not labored to inhale this air, but the opposite. It's relieving, freeing, like a burden falling away. Your body says thank you, says automatically, this is what I was made for. This is my purpose, to breathe this scent, to breathe this essence, to take this richness into my body, into my lungs, into my blood, into my cells. It's a scent of health, of life, of endurance, of authenticity, of truth. It reminds you of things, of moments you'd forgotten ever existed, that were real. It reminds you of a walk in a forest, perhaps years ago, perhaps decades, when you smelled this same damp earth, breathed this same air, and how soothing it was then, how healing, how necessary. It reminds you of your grandmother, who always kept plants in her room, had potted flowers everywhere, and how the earth in her flower pots smelled when you watered them, when you poured water over the dry soil, how the scent rose up, dark brown and living. It reminds you of rain in your childhood, of proper rain, of weather, of nature, of puddles you played in barefoot and soaked, of the cold and the wet and the feeling of freedom, absolute freedom. The compartment itself is transformed by this scent. The air that seemed stale and lifeless is now animated, becomes almost vibrant. The heating beneath the seat still hums, but it no longer seems artificial. It's like a fire burning outdoors, drawing in the forest scent and spreading it around. The seat you're sitting on grows softer, more comfortable, as if nature itself were embracing you. You close your eyes, and the scent becomes your new perception of the world. You no longer see the compartment, the window, the landscape passing by, but rather, you see inside the earth, the forest floor, where millions of tiny creatures labor, fungi, bacteria, roots, all connected to each other in a network older than language. The scent guides you into this world, makes you small, makes you part of it. There's also a hint of mushrooms in this scent, of rotting wood becoming fungus. It's not unpleasant, but magnetic. You feel how your body hungers for this moisture, knows it's good for you, knows this dampness cleanses your system, nourishes your lungs, soothes your skin. Autumn is the time of mushrooms, the time of decay, the time when the earth eats itself to be born again. Your breathing slows, deepens, becomes more complete. With each breath you draw, you take more of this scent into yourself. It's no longer just a scent, but part of you, part of your body's chemistry, part of who you are. The boundary between you and nature grows thinner and thinner. You ask yourself, where do I end and the forest begin? And the answer is, there is no boundary. The light in the compartment becomes blue-gray, becomes a color that's not quite color, becomes the essence of twilight. The forest outside grows dark, becomes deep green, becomes black silhouette in the deepest places, the innermost parts of the wood. The sun is gone beyond the hills now, gone for the day, vanished, and only the lingering warmth of its light filters through the trees, breaks through the needles and leaves. The scent grows more intense in this light, becomes amplified, becomes the only reality. Or no, the scent remains the same, but your perception grows more intense, more concentrated, absolute. You've become more sensitive, more open to truth, more vulnerable to beauty. You notice your body has grown very warm, almost hot, even though it's cold outside, even though the autumn night is cold, even though the forest breathes cold air. The heating is doing its work, functioning, humming. But the scent warms you too, makes you warm from within, warms your spirit, warms your heart, makes you alive from the inside. It's a pleasant warmth, a healing warmth, a warmth that says, you're safe, you're cared for, you're home, you're part of something greater. The forest surrounding you is not hostile, not threatening, but welcoming, open to you. It knows you. Your blood knows it. It's known you before, long before you were born, in another life, in another time. The scent changes now slightly, grows less intense, becomes gentler. Or perhaps your sense of smell is satiated, has taken in enough, cannot absorb more, is full of this knowledge. It's as if the forest is speaking to you, whispering, you have enough. It's time to sleep, time to rest, time to let yourself fall. Your body agrees at once, agrees willfully, without resistance, without struggle, without question. Your eyes, which you've closed, grow heavier still, drawn shut more firmly, as if a hand is closing them. Your thoughts grow hazy, blur together with the scent, mix with this forest air, become part of the forest that continues on. The eternal darkness outside, the endless, infinite autumn night that waits for you, seeks you, wants you. The scent stays with you, breathes with you, beats your heart in rhythm with the sleeping earth. Dusk comes early in autumn, arrives by 4 or 5 o'clock, long before the real night sets in, long before the stars come out, and rain arrives with it, coming from the clouds, falling from above, arriving from a distance that has no boundary. It's not dramatic, this rain, not wild, not the sort of violent summer thunderstorm that tears everything apart, not the aggressive sort of downpour that churns the earth, but something gentle, persistent, steady, a tapping that looks like patience, sounds like patience, is patience itself made manifest. You notice it first as a rhythmic tip, tip, tip against the window beside you, a sound that's regular and yet not regular, something that draws your attention gently, the way an old hand might touch you, the way an old voice might whisper your name. The rain is cold, carries a chill that says winter's coming. It's a warning and an invitation all at once. The drops are small, tiny, so small you can barely make out individual ones, and they patter against the glass without any urgency, without haste, patter gently, unhurriedly. It's as if each single drop were saying, "Do you see me? Do you recognize me? Am I important?" And then the next one, and the next, and the next, on and on, until it's a choir, a mighty chorus of millions of tiny voices, all saying, "We're still here. We're always here. We won't disappear. We'll keep you company all the way to sleep." The rhythm isn't perfect, isn't mechanical, not like a machine, but organic, alive, human, like the pulse of a sleeping animal, like the heartbeat of a mother rocking her child. Sometimes the drops quicken, then slow, then quicken again, in rhythm with the wind, in nature's rhythm, and you feel your own heart synchronizing with this rain, becoming breathless with it, adjusting its beat to this one, becoming one with the rain itself. You watch the droplets, trace their paths as they slide down the pane. Watch them fulfill their destiny, follow the law of gravity. They're not simple, these water droplets, not trivial, not meaningless. Each has its own journey, its own story, its own small drama. One collects other droplets on its way down, grows larger with each one it gathers, gains strength, becomes a little stream, aware of itself, knowing that it exists, that it matters. Another gets deflected by a breeze, gets swept sideways by the wind, follows a curve, a bend that only the glass knows, that only this single surface knows. It's a miniature drama unfolding before your eyes, a drama of transience and persistence, of life and death, of beginning and ending. The twilight makes the tapping even clearer, even more present, even more immediate. The light grows weaker, fades, becomes a memory of day, and your focus shifts toward the auditory, concentrates, intensifies. Your eyes can't see so much anymore, can't make out details, distinguish colors, and so your hearing sharpens, becomes more sensitive, becomes more attentive, becomes your primary sense. The tapping grows louder, becomes clearer, becomes unavoidable. Not because the rain grows harder, not because more water falls, but because the silence around you grows louder, because there's less competition. The other sounds of the day fall silent, disappear into the darkness. The birds have gone home, returned to their nests. The light of the dying sun is gone, vanished below the horizon, and only the rain remains, steady, inevitable, the only music left to hear. This constant, soothing tip, tip, tip. This beautiful, endless tip, tip, tip. It reminds you of something from childhood. Not a specific moment, not a specific time, not a specific event, but the feeling of safety, the feeling of security, that primitive feeling of shelter. It's the feeling of being inside whilst it rains outside, whilst the world grows wet, whilst the earth drinks, of being safe whilst nature moves and lives and breathes. It's an ancient feeling, deep in your bones, deep in your DNA, that knows there are roofs, knows there are walls, knows there are places where you're dry, where you're warm, where you're protected. And yet, even as you enjoy this sense of shelter, you also feel the pull of the rain. Feel it calling to you. Feel your inner child whispering, "Come outside and play. Become part of nature. Forget this artificial warmth. Come out into the rain." The window ledge beside you has grown wet, saturated, drenched with water. The rain's coming from the left, slanting, so it manages to reach under the small overhang of the train, into this protected space, this little niche, this microcosm. A small puddle gathers on the surface, grows larger, becomes an ocean if you're as small as an ant. The water is cold, a cold that bites, so cold it almost hurts to dip your fingers into it, to feel that chill on your skin. But it's a good pain, a meaningful pain, a pain that wakes you, that pulls you from the half-sleep, that tells you you're still alive, you still exist, you're still real. Tells you that you're real, that the world is real, that this moment is not a dream, but life, pure life, unfiltered life. The compartment itself is being transformed by the rain, being remade, becoming something else. The air grows damper, denser, becomes a substance you could almost drink, and your body adjusts, adapts like a plant turning toward the light, breathing differently, deeper, slower, moving differently, moving less, moving more easily. The upholstery of the seats absorbs the smell of the rain, takes in that scent of water and earth, mixes it with the smell of cloth, with the smell of plastic, with the smell of age, with the smell of years. Years of trains, years of carrying people. It's not unpleasant, this smell. Not nasty, not repellent, but familiar. Familiar as the hand of an old friend. Familiar as home, as shelter. The rain transforms the train into a place of transition, into a magical space between outside and inside, between wet and dry, between nature and civilization, between outside and in. Your breathing grows shallower, slower, deeper, finds the rhythm of the rain. You notice you've sunk into a state of relaxation, that you're no longer struggling against the night, against the darkness, against tiredness. Your shoulders sink like a tree bending to the wind. Your hands rest on your thighs, relaxed, open. The rain is the best music for relaxation, the best hypnotist, the best teacher of peace. It asks nothing of you except to listen, except to be present, except to exist. It doesn't ask you to speak to it, to understand it, to recognize it, only to be there and listen, whilst it sings its song, whilst it tells you that everything passes, everything falls, everything can sleep. The colors outside shift to dark blue, become almost black, then dark gray, then white again, then black, in a constant exchange. It's not night yet, but it's no longer day, no longer bright, no longer sun. It's the twilight time, the hour of boundaries, the time of shadows and reflections. the time between times. The window pane becomes a mirror, becomes a surface looking both inward and outward, and you see your own face, see the person you are, blurred, overlaid with the raindrops outside, mingled with nature. It's as if the world is splitting into two halves, one inside where you sit, where it's warm, where it's human, and one outside where the rain falls, where it's cold, where nature reigns. And the boundary between them is permeable, blurred, almost non-existent, almost dissolved. The tapping becomes melodic, becomes music, becomes something you could sing. The individual drops are no longer just random sounds, but a pattern, a rhythm that repeats, that develops, that changes. Tip, tip, pause. Tip, 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 pause. Tip, 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 pause. Tip, 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 tip. It's as if the rain is telling you a story, teaching you a very old story, a story as ancient as the world, a story only rain can tell, that only water knows. It's the story of water falling from the sky, of earth that drinks, of decay and rebirth, of cycles, of eternal cycles that never end, that always continue, of birth and death and rebirth. You notice your eyes growing heavy, your eyelids growing heavy, it taking effort to keep them open. Not because you're tired with ordinary tiredness, not because your body is exhausted, but because the twilight makes them heavy, because the light is fading, because your body knows, because physiology knows that it's time to sleep, that the day is over, that night is coming. The rain is your lullaby, is the song your mother would have sung to you, is the ancient song of all mothers. And the darkness is your blanket, is what keeps you warm, what protects you. You can feel it, can sense it in your body, how your body is beginning to sink, how your spine is relaxing, how the train beneath you is becoming a bed, a soft, supportive, safe bed, a nest into which you can lie. The tapping at the window grows quieter in your awareness, becomes softer, grows more distant. Not because it's actually quieter in the physical world, but because you're wandering deeper, deeper into yourself, deeper into the darkness, deeper into sleep. The rain is still there, is present, will always be there, will be eternal. But it's now part of your dream, part of the boundary between waking and sleeping, part of the transition. It's no longer tapping against the pane, no longer against the glass, but tapping directly on your mind, gently, invitingly, with a sort of love, telling you, come with me, come, drift with me into sleep, into rest, into night, into darkness, into dream. The rain taps on, tapping you into a warm, damp dream that smells of earth and hope. The window's open just a crack, mind you, barely a few centimeters, barely wide enough for the air to slip through. But that's all the fog needs to sneak in like an uninvited guest who knows how to wait. Autumn fog doesn't come rushing at you, no, it's far too clever for that, too patient. It edges its way into your compartment slowly, like a gentle hand pushing a door ajar, millimeter by millimeter, until it's standing wide open. There's something cold about it, this fog, ruthlessly cold. A chill that doesn't just touch your skin, but seeps in, like water soaking into wood. And it smells of damp things, rain and forest, and the nearness of earth itself, of soil and roots and fungi and leaves going back to the ground. You feel it first on your face. The sensation is intense, waking, a small surprise. Cold on your cheeks, on your forehead, on your lips. The fog settles on your skin like dewdrops, but not like singular drops so much as a gathering of them, a swarm of something more fluid, more mysterious, something you can't quite pin down. It's as if the darkness itself were trying to touch you, trying to see you, trying to know you, whether you're awake or drifting away, half into a dream already. Your breath turns visible, small white clouds you exhale into the cold air, and these clouds mingle with the fog streaming in, flowing in, and for a moment, one long, endless moment, you can't tell whether the breath is coming from your warm body or whether the fog is breathing you, drawing you in, making you its own. The view through the window blurs into an abstract painting of gray and white. The landscape that was dark brown and gray just moments ago dissolves into white nothing, into a space without boundaries, into a realm without direction or dimension, no up or down, no here or there. The train carries on through this fog with unshakable certainty, but it feels as though the train is still and the fog is flowing past you instead, as if the world is moving and you're the one anchored to a single spot in the universe. It's a dizzying illusion, a bewildering deception, this dissolving of movement and stillness, this reversal of cause and effect. Your insides grow quiet, remarkably quiet. Your breathing synchronizes with the train's rhythm, becomes slow, becomes deep, becomes regular, and the fog becomes a pulse, a sort of living thing that's not bound to any body, a form of being older than matter itself. You don't close your eyes, but you're not really seeing either. Or rather, you see everything, but it means nothing. It's all the same, all fog, all gray, all non-seeing. You notice you're hovering between waking and sleep, occupying a space between spaces, and the fog helps you hold this state, helps you keep the balance, helps you not topple forward or back. It's as if your own consciousness has gone a bit foggy too, blurred at the edges, fluid in the middle, no longer solid or defined or separate. The boundaries of your body grow soft, grow porous, grow permeable. The cold air brushing your cheek is no longer something coming from outside, from a world beyond you, but part of some larger movement, some larger breathing. The very breathing of nature itself, of the universe breathing and breathing you along with it. The heating beneath the seat hums like a cat, a primitive sort of humming that's soothing, that whispers, "It's all right, you're warm, you're safe." And it creates an interesting contrast, almost unbearably intense in its way. Up where the fog creeps in, it's cold, biting, palpable cold. But down where your legs are, where your feet rest in your shoes, you're warming yourself against the accumulated heat pooling beneath the seat, heat gathering like blood in a wounded creature. Your body becomes a sort of borderland between two worlds, the cold autumn outside and the warm artificiality of the train within, between nature and civilization, between outside and in. It reminds you of something, takes you back to a time you thought you'd forgotten, to when you were small and your grandmother sat across the room watching you whilst you had a fever, and you were so hot, so impossibly hot, and the air was cool and your grandmother sat there keeping vigil, and all of that was real, and this fog now is equally real, though it's white and formless and impossible to grasp. The fog seems to swallow sounds, seems to drink them in like a sponge, seems to gulp them down and never give them back. The clacking of the rails grows quieter. Or no, it's just as loud as it always was, but it sounds farther away, much farther. as if it's coming from another world, another time. Your hearing is confused by this new density in the air, this new physical reality, by a fog that absorbs everything. The fog has weight, has substance, even though you can't hold it, and that weight dampens every frequency, every vibration, renders everything hushed. A space of silence forms within movement, a paradox, a wonder, a place of rest. The train rolls on, carries on relentlessly, but it's as if it's moving through silence, through cotton wool, through someone else's dream. You open your hand and hold it toward the window. Stretch it out into the stream of fog, into this white world, this strange substance. Your fingers grow wet, grow damp, grow moistened by the fog, but you can barely feel it. The particles are so fine, the dampness so subtle, so close to nothing at all. It's a different sort of wetness from rain, more intimate, more invasive, more personal, as if the fog were speaking directly to you. I'm here, I see you, I'm going to change you. Rain strikes with force, with violence, with intent, but fog creeps in gently, quietly, with patience. It needs no strength, only time and patience and the willingness of the one receiving it. Your hand grows cold, grows numb, but not unpleasantly, rather soothingly, peacefully. It's the cold of dying, the kind they say is peaceful, the cold that's like falling asleep, the cold that feels like coming home. A thought arrives just like that, out of nowhere, the way thoughts come in the half-sleep, the way dreams arrive. You think of all the creatures enveloped in fog right now, somewhere out there in this indefinable landscape. The deer, the badgers, the hedgehogs in their nests, the birds, the insects, the microscopic animals only visible under light. All of them wrapped in this fog, all bundled as if in a blanket, all part of this thickness, this consistency, and all knowing instinctively, knowing in their bones, that the year is ending, that winter is coming. The fog is nothing new to them, nothing surprising, nothing frightening, but natural, necessary, expected, even welcome. And perhaps, you think, perhaps it's necessary for you too. Perhaps your body needs this cold. Perhaps your mind needs this confusion. Perhaps your soul needs this fog to know that it's time to sleep. The compartment itself is changing, mutating, becoming something else. The air grows heavier, denser, becomes something you could almost drink, becomes a substance, not just a gas. The objects around you lose their sharpness, lose their outlines, lose their identities. The abandoned book on the seat opposite becomes a shadow, becomes a suggestion, becomes a possibility. The newspaper on the floor becomes a blank surface without detail, becomes a collection of words that don't mean anything. The fog softens the world, strips away the aggression of forms and colors, makes everything the same, makes everything its own color. This white-gray color that's no color at all. It's as if it's saying, don't look so carefully, your eyes deceive you, your senses lie to you. Trust the blurred, trust the unclear, trust what you can't see. Let yourself drift with the uncertainty, let yourself float like a leaf on the wind. Your own thoughts grow foggy too, grow blurred, grow ambiguous, become shadows of thoughts. You can't think with clarity anymore, but that's all right, more than all right, it's necessary. You don't always need clarity, not always order, not always truth. Sometimes the hazy is nearer to truth than any sharp edge, any clear line of thinking. The fog draws you closer to the deepest sleep, to the place where dreams begin, to the place where the line between reality and dream dissolves. You notice you're not shivering anymore, not cold, not bothered by the chill. It's part of you now, it's soaked into you. You and the fog are becoming one, and there's no boundary left between you. The window's fogging over now, clouding with fine water droplets on the inside, with countless tiny beads covering the glass like a gathering of insects. The fog has broken through the boundary, has overcome the barrier, has not only crept into your compartment, but laid itself across the glass itself, claimed it as its own. It's as if the outside world is trying to seep into your dreams, trying to alter your thoughts, or as if your dreams are trying to press outward into the outside world, trying to take physical form. The separation between inside and outside grows thinner and thinner, more and more permeable, becomes a line, becomes a breath, becomes nothing at all. You find your breath slowing, growing shallow, then deeper, becoming rhythmic, synchronizing with the streaming fog. Your breathing finding the same frequency as the fog itself.
A long, cold breath drifts in, enters your nose, your lungs, your heart, and you exhale it warm, change it with your body heat, make it part of you, only to breathe it in again, colder now, transformed, no longer the same fog, but a mixture. It's a cycle, a conversation between you and the autumn, a dialogue between human and nature, an exchange of gases and feelings. The fog seems to listen to you, seems to pay you attention, seems to understand that you're ready to let go, ready to move on, ready to sleep, that the darkness outside and the darkness within you are the same thing, that there's no difference between them. Time becomes gelatinous, becomes something that flows but has no direction, becomes something formless. You no longer know how long the window's been open, how long the fog's been creeping in, how long you've been sitting here allowing it all to happen. It could be minutes, could be hours, could be an entire eternity, and you wouldn't know, wouldn't feel it. The fog makes time irrelevant, makes the clock meaningless, turns it into a question without an answer, a question that shouldn't even be asked. You're drifting in this nothing, this white, this space beyond space, and it's perfect, it's absolute, it's enough, it's more than enough. The world outside no longer exists, only this cold, damp breath, this autumn whisper, telling you that you're never alone, that you're surrounded by millions of things, that autumn has taken you in its arms and held you and soothed you. And slowly, without noticing, your head tilts to the side, droops like an old flower losing its strength. The muscles give way, soft as butter. The tension falls away. The effort fades. The fog grows dark around you. Or no, you grow dark. It doesn't matter. It's not important who grows dark, where the darkness comes from. Everything becomes one. Everything becomes a single substance, gray and white and warm, in a dream that's nearer to truth than waking, that's more real than reality itself. The fog drifts on, carries you with it, quiet, gentle, unstoppable.
You sit by the window, hand resting lightly against the cold glass, and the train begins to slow. It's one of those small country platforms where time seems to move differently, where the world beyond the railway still believes in the things that matter. The breaking wind whispers past, and then there's nearly silence, just the hiss of the brakes, and far off, the distant click-clack of metal on metal. But then you hear it, the whisper. It's not loud, not aggressive, but rather something fragile and fleeting, as if someone were crumpling paper very gently. Oh no, even more delicate than that, like an insect creeping across dry bark. The autumn leaves on the platform dance in the breath of the arriving train, and each one produces this tender, golden sound, a noise older than words. You don't close your eyes, but you focus entirely on how the air carries them, how they rub against one another, dry and thin after weeks in the wind, after weeks of being drawn out, prepared for precisely this moment. It carries you back to autumns you've nearly forgotten, to autumns that feel like they happened to someone else, like another life entirely. To a day when you were small and your father took your hand to walk through the leaves, his hand large and warm and certain, and you laughed because the whisper was everywhere, under your feet, in the air, in your hair, a whole orchestra of dry leaves playing just for you. But that was different then, somehow heavier, weighted with a child's weight, living now only in your memory, growing more distant, more shadowed, like an old photograph looked at too many times. Now, on this platform, in this moment, under the first great break of the train, the whisper has grown older, riper, wiser. It sounds like time itself, slipping away, like the earth's own voice saying, "This too shall pass." One leaf sticks to the glass, a dark red one, almost brown, with veins still visible like dark electricity, like the veins in an old man's hand. It trembles where the wind holds it, trembling with the force of a dying bird. And its whisper is the whisper of something that has done its work, that has reached its purpose. It's ready to let go, ready to give back to the earth what the earth once gave to it. You watch the platform through the glass. It's nearly empty. Just an old woman standing there with her small case, waiting for a train that may have already come or may still arrive. And she too is watching the leaves, as if she's asking the same question you are. What more do these leaves have to tell us? The hems of her coat move gently, and all around her the leaves dance, dozens, perhaps hundreds, in an endless, imperceptible whirl, a dance only autumn knows, only autumn can choreograph. Each leaf has its own voice, its own path to the ground, and together they create a whisper, an ancient whisper, a song from 1,000 throats that says, "The year is ending. All that begins must also end." Autumn takes what remains and turns it to earth, turns it to ground, turns it into what new things will grow from. The light here is strange, almost supernatural. It's the dusk of an autumn afternoon, that famous hour when darkness comes early and the sun approaches from only one side, lighting the leaves from beneath, turning them into flames. The colors intensify once more, turning gold and red before the night extinguishes them, before they vanish into darkness. The whisper grows louder. Or no, you perceive it more clearly, you focus on it, because your ear has learned to search for it, because it's become the most important music there is. It's as if the train itself pauses to listen, as if the whole world stops to hear the leaves perform their final symphony, their farewell, their song of thanks for a year beneath the sun. One leaf reaches over the platform's edge, large, yellow-green, almost still alive, and its whisper is a bit louder than the others. It whispers with force, with reluctance. It seems to fight, to resist, unwilling to crumble like the others, not ready to make this journey. You like this leaf. It has stubbornness, defiance, a sort of respectable rebellion, something brave. It doesn't just whisper, it protests with every sound. It says, "I'm not finished yet. I'm not ready." The wind eventually takes it, carries it off, spins it, tosses it about, and its protest fades slowly, grows weaker. The rebellion ebbs as it joins the whirl of all the other leaves, becomes one with them, becomes part of the great chorus. You notice that you can breathe more deeply now, that your breathing has slowed, that you've synchronized with the rhythm of the whisper. The scent coming through the window is dry, earthy, a little bitter, like nutshells, like old books, like attics that haven't been aired in years. It mingles with the smell of the train, oil and metal, the ghost of a million journeys, and creates something complex, something many-layered, something that exists only at this particular time of year, this precious autumn hour. It's the scent of farewell, a smell that says, everything you've loved will go. It's also the smell of decay and renewal at once, because from decay comes earth, and from earth comes new life, in spring, when the time is right again. The woman on the platform sits down on a bench now, and the movement startles 36 leaves into frantic whisper, chaotic now, louder, more agitated. A brief crescendo, a peak, a cry of all the gathered leaves. You imagine she hears it too, this old woman, with ears that have listened to so much music in their lifetime. And perhaps it comforts her, this sound, this ancient sound of autumn that her grandmother's grandmother heard as well. Perhaps she isn't waiting for a train at all. Perhaps she's simply sitting here to listen to this whisper, to remember earlier years, autumns long gone, times when she too was young and heard the leaves with different ears, with a different heart. Your body sinks deeper into the seat, relaxes, gives in. The compartment is warm, an artificial warmth, but warmth nonetheless. The heating purrs quietly beneath the seat like a cat, a soothing purr, an animal sound that says, "You're safe here." And the warmth contrasts with the cold beyond the glass, creates a borderland of comfort. The whisper outside becomes more and more like a gentle lullaby. Not because it's soft, not because it's quiet, but because it's imperceptible, because it's part of nature, beyond your control. Not something you can change, only accept. The train will soon move on. You know this with certainty. You hear the announcements, see the movement on the platform. But for now, this small infinity of a platform, this small eternity, this small perfumed hour is enough. You note, observe, absorb how the leaves hang in the air, weightless and yet heavy, how they fall and yet are held aloft, how the wind conducts them like an invisible maestro, like a god with no mercy, only his game to play. The whisper is no longer remarkable, no longer new, but has become something deeper, something more homely, part of your breathing, part of the rhythm of this moment, part of your heart. With every frequency, it tells you, everything falls, everything dissolves, nothing remains, everything ends. But it needn't be sad, needn't be terrible. It's only the natural way of things, the way the earth has always gone, since earth began. The air in the compartment grows cooler, fresher, because you've left the window slightly open and autumn is pouring in. And the whisper comes closer, becomes more physical, becomes something you can feel, not just hear, but feel on your skin. Feel as vibration, as energy. You can almost feel the leaves landing on the glass, tiny light impacts, almost like fingertips, almost like a pulse. The pulse of autumn, the pulse of nature. Your own pulse slows, synchronizes with the rhythm of the whisper. Your breath grows quieter, becomes part of the whole, and the whisper becomes the center of the world. The only place your attention flows, the only point that matters. The conductor now stands somewhere on the platform at the head of the train, a silhouette against the late light, checking his watch, controlling time. His time, not the time of the leaves, not nature's time, but mechanical time, railway time. The old woman rises slowly, painfully, gathering her small case, turns once more to look at the leaves, as if to say goodbye, preparing to board, to leave, to return to her life. But the leaves dance on, careless of schedules and timetables, unconcerned with the world of humans forever rushing, forever hurrying. They have their own time, their own whisper, eternal and finite at once, timeless and yet present, like everything the earth touches, like all that lives. The whisper grows quieter now, slower, softer, sleepier, as if the world itself were drifting off, as if autumn were growing tired of its game. The train rumbles beneath you, a quiet, rhythmic sound that joins the leaf whisper like a bass beneath a melody. It's become the melody now, no longer two separate sounds, but one, connected, complete music, a whole symphony of nature and machine, of heart and engine. And as you listen to their interplay, as you're wholly immersed in this sound, as your body sinks into the seat like water, as your breath synchronizes with the whisper, breathing with the leaves, you feel the world gently tip, gently down, into warm sleep, into rest, into the darkness that waits. The leaves, they still whisper as you drift away. They whisper on long after your eyes have closed. The Ore Mountains train is full this morning, and I share my compartment with a man who stands out at once, not because of his size, but because of the trace his life has left on him. Soot, black residue, clings stubbornly to his neck, a sharp line between clean skin and what his work has made of him. The line runs sharply, as though someone had drawn it with a ruler, clean above, dark below. He's perhaps in his late 40s, not old like me, but the skin around his eyes is prematurely burnt, tanned by something powerful. His forearms, the sleeves rolled up, are covered with burn scars, a dense pattern of encounters with flame. Not ugly, but like the handwriting of his work, written on flesh. Each scar a place where the heat came too close. "Good morning," I say, and he nods, sits down, already has a roll in his hand. He chews, looks out. I wait, but with this man I quickly notice, waiting helps. The silence is not unpleasant. The heat of his work seems still to radiate from him, even now, in the cool train compartment. Or perhaps it's just the memory of heat I smell from him. After a while, perhaps because I've simply admitted I'm looking at him, he says, "You noticed the scars?" "Yes," I answer. He nods slowly, as though he'd expect this. "I'm a blacksmith. I work in Annaberg, took over the workshop from my father." His tone isn't proud and isn't humble, simply fact, like the weather or the rails beneath us. "And what's the hardest work?" I ask, not from politeness, but because I'm really curious. because I see someone whose whole life is written in his scars. He leans back, sighs a little, a sigh that comes from deep within. "The fire," he says. "Not the heat, that's just the surface. The fire, that's where the thing lies." He bites from his roll, chews thoughtfully. "You have to understand," he says then, his voice not impatient but clear. "The metal, it has to be exactly the right heat. Not too early, not too late. One moment wrong, and it's ruined. 30 years I've been doing this, and it's still a matter of timing, of feel." His hand moves, showing the movement, though it can't happen here on the train. You heat it up until it glows, white hot, until you can see the color dancing in it. Blue, red, orange, then white. Then you strike, with the hammer, with force but not anger. Exactly right. A masterstroke, we call it. You feel it when it's right. "But," he says, and his voice grows rougher, deeper, "it's not just the technique. That's the thing with fire. It destroys and it shapes. One and the same, you see. The heat that makes the metal flexible, that can make it beautiful, the stuff that lets you create new forms, the same heat can ruin everything, can turn everything to ash. One moment wrong, and the whole piece is lost." He looks at me. His eyes are grey and very clear. "I don't know to this day," he says very calmly, "what it does more often. Whether the fire destroys more or shapes more. I've made thousands of pieces, thousands. Good ones, bad ones. Some I'm proud of, and others..." He shrugs. "And in the end, I still don't know." Not sad, these words. Not bitter. Simply true. The way burn scars are true. You don't ask their meaning. They're there. They're part of you. He throws the roll paper into a bag, puts it away, settles his arms. "Going too deep on you," he says, a bit of humor in his voice, as though surprised at himself. "No," I say. "Not too deep. Just right." We're silent again. The train moves through the mountains, and the landscape is grey and yet warm at once. October in the Ore Mountains, when the leaves are falling and the heat still hangs somewhere in the air, though it's cold, though winter's already on the way. The foliage outside is brown and orange, forgotten already. I think about his fire, about the question he's asked and hasn't answered, which perhaps can't be answered, which perhaps shouldn't be answered. Fire doesn't answer questions. Fire acts. Does it destroy more or shape more? I'm too old to know. I'm too old to be able to decide. But I sit beside a man who lives his whole life in this fire, who carries the heat on his skin, who speaks with scars instead of words. And his question is like a door I don't open, but simply am grateful for. That it's there, that it was asked, that he shares it with me. Before Chemnitz, I step out. The train brakes. I hear the hiss of the brakes, and I stand up, fetch my baggage from above. The blacksmith still sits there. He looks at me, nods for a long time. "Good journey," he says. "You too," I answer. He's about to turn back to the window when he says something else, more to himself. "The fire,
It doesn't ask what it does more often. It just does both. That's the secret. That's all it does.
I step out into the cold air. Behind me, the door closes. The train begins to roll, slowly, then faster. The blacksmith still sits at his window, and I imagine him continuing on to Annaberg. Imagine the question continuing with him. The question that needs no answer, because the answer lies in the work itself, in the scars, in the flames that will blaze again tomorrow.